you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry for that, for your sake.
Yes, sir.
I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. I play with wonderful expression. When it comes to the piano, sentiment is my forte. I have the science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of science for life, did you prepare the cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I saw in your book that Thursday night when I was dining with Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing, you have 8 bottles of champagne entered as being consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage really so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I don't have much experience myself to present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't think I care to hear about your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not very interesting at all. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is their purpose for? They seem, as a class, to have no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you down?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else would bring one anyway? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
It is customary in good society to have some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
Well, when one is in town, one amuses oneself, and when one is in the country, one amuses other people. Oh, it is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours. Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
I'm sure you amuse them immensely. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shop. Oh, yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta. And Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
Well, may I ask why?
Oh, my dear fellow. The way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you came here for pleasure. That sounds like business.
How utterly unromantic you are!
I don't find anything about proposing to be romantic. Well, it's very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted, one often is, I believe, but then the excitement's all gone. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try and forget that fact.
I am quite well aware of that, dear Algie. The divorce courts were specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there's no use speculating that. Divorces were made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They were made especially for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them all this time.
Well, that is a different matter. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter it is too.
You need not eat it as if you're going to eat it all. You act as if you're already married to her. You're not already married to her, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, first of all, girls never marry the man they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees about. And second of all, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you'll have to clear up this whole subject of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth are you talking about? What on earth are you talking about, Algie, with Cecily? I don't know anyone with the name of Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
You mean to tell me that you have had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness that you had let me know. I was writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no use offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I find that very mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, none of that matters, for after reading the inscription, I see the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You know, you've seen me with it 100 times, and this is not proper and right to read what's written inside. It's very ungentlemanly to read the contents of a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have such a hard and fast rule about what one should read and one shouldn't. Well, more than half of modern culture is made up of things one shouldn't read.
I'm quite well aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing that one talks of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
This isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a gift from someone by the name of Cecily. Oh, you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Oh, yes, charming old lady she is as well. Lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But what does she call herself? Little Cecily, if she is your aunt from Tunbridge Wells. From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
my dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? So some aunts are tall. Some aunts are, not tall. That surely be better than aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that all aunts should be exactly like your aunt. I mean, that is absurd. Oh, for heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case!
Then why does she call you uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to my dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being small, but why on earth an aunt, no matter what her size, would call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
Well, you have always told me your name is Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking man I've ever seen in my life. It is absurd to say your name isn't Ernest. Here, it says so on your card. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof if you ever try to deny your name as Ernest to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that doesn't account for why your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Come on, old boy, you best have the thing out at once.
My dear fellow, you speak exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to speak as though one were a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists do. Now, go on. Tell me everything. May I admit that I've always thought of you as a confirmed and secret Bunburyist. Oh, now I'm sure of it.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll deliver you the meaning of that incomparable expression once you are kind enough to tell me why you're Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, deliver your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
Oh, my dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's really quite ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who refers to me as uncle for motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives in my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is your place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I quite suspected that, my dear fellow. I've been buried all across Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I'm not sure you'll be able to understand my true motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one's placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And since a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce to either one's health or indeed one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. If it were, modern life would be completely tedious. Modern literature, complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be a bad thing at all.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear boy. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who have never been to a university. They do it quite well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. Oh, I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. Why, you're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I've ever seen in my life.
What on earth do you mean by that?
You have invented a useful younger brother by the name of Ernest, so that you can come up to town whenever you choose. I have created an invaluable, permanent invalid by the name of Bunbury, so that I can go into the country whenever I choose. Oh, Bunbury is very invaluable, for you see, if it wasn't for his terrible sickness, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I, in fact, have been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know! You're absurdly careless at sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had best dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I don't have the smallest intent of doing anything of the sort. First of all, I dined with her on Monday, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relations. Second of all, whenever I do dine with her, I'm always treated as a member of the family and sat down with no women at all, or two. And thirdly, I know exactly whom she'll place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her husband from across the dinner table. Oh, it is most unpleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husband in public is perfectly disgraceful. It looks so bad. It's like cleaning one's own linens in public. Besides, now that I know you're a Bunburyist, naturally I want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I am going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him anyway. Cecily is a little too interested in him. It really is rather a bore. So I am going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your Mr. Your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to get rid of Bunbury. Besides, if you ever get married, which seems to be extremely problematic, you'll be glad to know Bunbury. A man that gets married without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, and indeed she is the only girl in the world I ever would marry, I certainly won't want to know a Bunbury.
Then your wife will. Oh, you don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company, and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Oh, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It's perfectly hard to be anything nowadays. There's such a beastly competition going about. Ah! That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives and creditors can ring in such a Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get rid of her for 10 minutes so that you have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you at Willis's tonight?
Oh, I suppose so if you want to.
Yes. Only if you're serious. I hate it when people aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you are behaving quite well.
Oh, I'm feeling quite well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, rarely do those two things go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It will leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry that we're late, Algernon. I felt obliged to call upon Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches that you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come sit here?
Thanks, Mamma. I am quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane! Where are the cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane, that will do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very distraught, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
Oh, it makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I've heard her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Oh, thank you. I have quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a lovely young woman, so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch her.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I'm going to have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I should hope not. It will put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
Yes, it is a great bore, and needless to say, a terrible disappointment. But the fact is, I've just received a telegram that my dear friend Bunbury has fallen ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
That is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think it's high time your Mr. Bunbury make up his mind whether he's going to live or to die. This shilly-shelling with the question is absurd. Nor do I approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. At least that's what I'm always telling your uncle. Not that he ever gives much notice as far as any improvement in his ailments go. I would be much obliged if you would ask your Mr. Bunbury to kindly not have a relapse on Saturday. For I require you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has said about all they have to say, which in most cases is probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he's still conscious, and I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. Now, the music is of great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, well, people don't talk. If one plays bad music, well, people don't listen. However, I'll run over the program I've drawn out if you'll kindly come into the next room with me.
Oh, thank you, Algernon. I'm sure that the program will be delightful following a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they're improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
A charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
Well, I do mean something else.
Yes, I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
I I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
Oh, I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I first met you, I have loved you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you'd been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
But you really love me, Gwendolyn.
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made
Oh,
me!
my own Ernest!
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else. Oh, you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
Well, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, then, personally, darling, and to speak quite candidly with you, I don't care much for the name of Ernest. Oh, no. In fact, I don't think that name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. Oh, it is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, now, Gwendolyn, there really are just so many much nicer names out there. I think Jack, for instance, just a charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name of Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. Oh, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Well then, Gwendolyn, I must get christened at we must get married at once. There really is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you have led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not entirely indifferent towards me.
I adore you, but you haven't even proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Oh, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
But you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Oh, of course I will, darling. Oh, how long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
I have never loved anyone in the world other than you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement you come upon a young girl is a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she should be able to decide for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I make this inquiry, Gwendolyn, you will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
You may have a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel obliged to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men. Although I do have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton. We work together, in fact. But I am prepared to add your name should your responses be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear it. Every man should have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Oh, a good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to marry should either know everything or know nothing. Which do you know?
I know, nothing, Lady Bracknell.
Oh, I'm very pleased to hear that. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
Investments, chiefly.
Oh, that's not unsatisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted of one after one's death, land has ceased to be a profit or a pleasure. It merely gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
Well, I have a country house with some land attached, of course. I'm about 1,500 acres, I believe, but I don't depend on it for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, only the poachers are the ones who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? That matter can be clarified later. You do have a town house, I hope. A girl of simple, unspoiled nature such as Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, yes, I have a place in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. I can, of course, get it back whenever I like, at around 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I do not know her.
She goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays, that's hardly any guarantee of respectability of character. What number of Belgrave Square?
Oh, 149.
Oh, the unfashionable side. I knew there would be something, but that could be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Oh, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us or come in the evening at any rate. And now to minor matters. Are your parents still living?
I have lost both of my parents.
To lose one parent might be regarded as a misfortune, but to lose both sounds like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise through the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, I don't actually really know. To tell you the truth, Lady Bracknell, I said that I had lost my parents, but it would actually be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found.
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of a very kind and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag.
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag. A somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it. Well, just an ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at a railway station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. To be born, or at any rate, bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst successes of the French Revolution, and I suppose you recall what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might be used to conceal a social indiscretion, indeed probably has been used for that purpose before, but could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
Well, then may I ask what you would advise me to do? I need not tell you that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I strongly advise you to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to produce at any rate one parent of either sex quite before the season is over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me? What has this to do with me, sir? You could hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and I would allow our only daughter, a girl raised with the utmost care, to marry into a parcel and form an alliance with a handbag. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. Oh, for heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algy. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? Oh, she has that way about her. She's always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured.
Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is absolutely unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really even know what a gorgon is, but I'm sure that Lady Bracknell is one. Either way, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I do apologize to you, Algy. I don't suppose I should talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
Oh, my dear boy. I love hearing my relations abused. Oh, it's the only thing that makes me put up with them in the first place. Relations are a tedious pack of people who don't have the remotest knowledge of how to live, Not the slightest idea of when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
I won't argue with you about it. You always want to argue about things.
That's what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that way, I would shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algie?
All women end up like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased. And quite true an observation as anything in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everyone is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing's become a rather public nuisance. I wish to goodness we still had a few fools left.
We have.
Well, I'd extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? The clever people, of course.
What fools?
Oh, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about you being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Dear fellow, that isn't the sort of thing one says to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave towards a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her, if she's pretty. And to someone else if she's playing.
That is nonsense.
Hey, what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, before the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say that he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You're better off to say a severe chill.
Are you sure that a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Oh, of course it's not.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Yes, but I thought you said Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, I shouldn't worry too much about that. Cecily isn't a silly romantic girl, I'm very glad to say. Oh, she goes long walks, has a capital appetite, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I'd really like to see Cecily.
I shall see to it that you never do. She's excessively pretty, and she's only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who's only just 18?
That isn't the sort of thing that one blurts out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I will bet you anything that within half an hour of their meeting, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear fellow, if we are going to get a good table of Willis's tonight, we must go and dress. Do you know it's nearly 7?
Oh, it is nearly always 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
Well, I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
Oh, no, I loathe listening.
We could go to a club.
Oh, no, I hate talking.
Might we trot around the Empire at 10?
Oh, no, I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work to do nothing. However, I don't mind doing nothing when there's no definitive object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word!
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Oh, Ernest, we may never be married. Oh, from the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard at all to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and although I may marry someone else and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh, dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
Oh, the Manor House in Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. Yes, it may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
Oh, my own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
Oh, you will let me see you to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
But I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I won't be back till Monday, I think. You may lay out all my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
Oh, tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
What a perfect pessimist you are, Lane.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Now there is a sensible, intellectual girl. Oh, the only girl I ever did love. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you're not careful, your friend Bunbury is going to get you into a serious scrape one of these days.
I love scrapes. They're the only thing that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense. Algie, you never say anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily! Surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. The German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
I don't like German. Isn't it all a becoming language? I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes I think he is so serious that he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and the gravity of his demeanor to be especially commended in one so comparatively young as he is. Well, I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. And you must remember his constant anxiety over that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I'm not sure that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not at all in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. Oh, you must put your diary away, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
Well, I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. Well, if I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novels, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction needs.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. Was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Oh, Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do us so much good to have a short stroll in the park with you, Dr. Chasuble.
Oh, Cecily, I've not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that, and not about my German lesson with the rector came in.
Well, I hope, Cecily, that you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
My, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically, of course. My metaphor was drawn from these. I trust Mr. Worthing has not yet returned from town.
We do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he likes to spend his Sundays in the city, doesn't he? He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, unlike, by all accounts, that unfortunate man his younger brother seems to be. Well, I shall not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name's Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I trust I will see you both in Evansholm.
I think, dear Doctor, that I will have a stroll with you. Oh. I find that I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
Perhaps we could go as far as the schools and back.
Oh, that would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Of course.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany West. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you, privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Well, I'm not really wicked at all, Cousin Cecily. You mustn't think I'm wicked.
Well, if you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a most inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. Well, that would be hypocrisy.
I suppose I have been rather reckless.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention this subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that. Though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I couldn't understand how you were here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by first train Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm very eager to miss.
Well, couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to attend a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life, but still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
Well, I certainly wouldn't let Jack pick out my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, my accounts of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Might you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I shall. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite without having a buttonhole first.
A Marischal meal?
I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. A Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that any sensible man would like to be caught up in.
I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You're much too alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, but a womanthrope, never.
I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was decidedly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive after marriage?
Oh, no married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
and often I am told not even to her.
Well, that depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. Oh, but where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing!
Well, this is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Oh, yes, Mr. Worthing, of course. What brings you back so soon?
My brother.
Oh, more shameful debt and extravagance.
Still pursuing the life of pleasure, I trust.
Dead!
Your brother, Ernest? Dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, you have my deepest condolences. But you must feel comfortable with the fact that you have been nothing but the kindest and the most generous of brothers.
Poor Ernest. Oh, he had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Oh my, yes, very sad. Were you with him in the end?
No, he died abroad, in fact, Paris, actually. I received a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Did they mention the cause of death?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. Not everyone is perfect. I myself am particularly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? Well, that hardly speaks of any sane mind at the end. You will, of course, wish me to make some slight allusion to this terrible domestic affliction on Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to any occasion, joyful, or in this case, solemn. I've preached it at harvest festivals, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I preached it was at the cathedral as a charity sermon for the Society for the Prevention of Discontent Among the Upper Orders. The bishop who was present was much taken by some of the analogies I drew.
You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I mean, you know how to christen all right. I mean, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
Was there a particular infant that you have in mind? Surely your brother was unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
Yes, but it's not for any child, dear doctor. No, I'm very fond of children, but no. I would like to be christened myself. This afternoon. No, if you haven't got anything else better.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've already been baptized.
Well, I don't remember anything about it.
Do you have any serious doubts about it?
I certainly intend to have. But I don't suppose the thing would bother you at all, or if you think I'm a little too old.
No. The sprinkling as well as the immersion of adults is perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
Oh, you needn't worry about that. Sprinkling is all that's necessary here, or particularly called for. Our weather can be so changing. What time would you like the ceremonies to take place?
Well, like trot in around 5, if that's okay with you.
Perfect. Yes, as a matter of fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. The case of twins in one of the outlying cottages on your very estate. Poor Jenkins the carter, a very hard-working man.
I wouldn't want to be christened alongside other children, dear doctor. Oh, that would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably. And now, Mr. Worthing, I will no longer intrude upon this house of sorrow. I would only beg you to be not too bowed down by your grief. What appeared to be bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
Oh, it seems to me to be a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily.
My child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do you look happy? Well, you look as if you had a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that, Uncle Jack. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Well, these are joyful tidings.
Oh, after we were all resigned to his loss, his sudden return seemed to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room? I don't know what any of this means. I find it perfectly absurd.
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all the trouble I have caused you, and that I intend to live a far better life in the future.
Good heavens!